Sardis, Philadelphia are all repeated in Laodicea. Now, if you've been here this weekend, you already know that Philadelphia is repeated in Laodicea because we're Laodicea, and we've been teaching all weekend long that the Millerite history is repeated. And our history in the Millerite history is the history of Philadelphia. Okay, so the history of Pergamos, if you're not familiar with it, you should be as a Seventh-day Adventist. But the third church, Pergamos, is the history of the compromise that prepares the way for the papacy to rule the world. And the church of Thyatira is when the papacy rules the world. Okay, but when the papacy rules the world at the end of time, that's Thyatira. It's repeated in the history of Laodicea. Is the papacy going to rule the world once again at the end of the world? Okay. And what church is it at the end of the world? Laodicea. So Laodicea and the Millerite history, Philadelphia and Thyatira, take place at the end of the world. But before the papacy can rule the world, there has to be a compromise that prepares the papacy to rule the world. Where is that compromise? Daniel 11, verse 40. The United States joins a secret alliance with the papacy to bring down the Soviet Union. But the papacy has bigger plans than just the Soviet Union. It has now got the United States to compromise. The history of Pergamos is the history of the compromise of the United States that takes Protestant America and turns it into the ally of the Pope of Rome. Okay, so Pergamos is repeated in our day and age, which is the history of Laodicea. But when God's people receive the seal of God and they go forth with a loud cry of the third angel's message, that's Ephesus. They're going to go forth on a white horse, conquering and to conquer. Okay, so, and we've already established there's going to be a bloodbath. Which church represents the bloodbath? Smyrna. Okay, so get Haskell's book. If you think that I'm making this up, you can show it prophetically that the history of all the churches is repeated in Laodicea. Follow the logic. If you go on the internet and you download the presentation from one of the prophecy schools that's called the Sherpa, at the Sherpa Prophecy School, we laid this out. Okay? So why am I saying that? I'm saying that for this. The history of the last 6 verses of Daniel 11 is the history of Laodicea. And you can show that the entire Bible is represented in the history of Laodicea. All the prophets are speaking about the end of the world. And the end of the world is the history of Laodicea. All the prophets are speaking about our day and age. And our day and age is illustrated in the last 6 verses of Daniel 11. So what I'm saying at this point is, brothers and sisters, the overview that we gave you of the last 6 verses of Daniel 11, that's what it is. It's a brief overview. It's an outline. There's many, many, many other things to say about the last 6 verses of Daniel 11. But I want to close in the little time that we have with a brief illustration of the Millerite history. And you're just going to have to follow along, and I hope that we all understand the basics. The time of the end was 1798 for the Millerites. And in that history, the papacy, it's going down. Okay? It's received its deadly wound. Okay? And in that history, there's three players primarily in that history. You have the papacy receiving a deadly wound. Who gives the deadly wound to the papacy? The king of the south. Atheism. Right? And who's the next kingdom in Bible prophecy in 1798? Okay. So in 1798, you have the king of the north, atheism, and the United States. Okay. What I'm saying is that in verse 40, by the end of verse 40, you've reached the time of the end for us at the end of the world. That's 1989. And because we're repeating the Millerite history to the very letter, we should expect to see in that history the papacy, atheism, and who else? USA. That's who we were identifying in verse 40. But in 1989, the papacy's not going down, is it? it's coming up. Okay, it's starting to rise, it's starting to ascend. Okay, now, if you look in a mirror, all right, if you look in a mirror and you raise your right hand, what do you see? You see yourself. Which hand are you raising? Your left. Okay, this is a mirror. In this history, the papacy's going down. The mirror, papacy's going up. But it's still the same history. It's the papacy, atheism in the United States. Are you with me? Okay. There's an increase of knowledge here in this history. There's an increase of knowledge here. The increase of knowledge here is from the book of Daniel. The increase of knowledge here is from the book of Daniel. The increase of knowledge here is the message that judgment is beginning. The increase of knowledge here is that judgment is closing. Okay? So, this message here, the first angel's message, it's going through history. And it's got to be empowered. All right? And it's empowered in 1840. August 11th, 1840. When Islam comes into this prophetic scenario. Islam is restrained on August 11th, 1840. This empowers the Millerite message because it confirms the year-day principle of Bible prophecy. They've been predicting the end of the world using the year-day principle of Bible prophecy. But in 1838, they begin to tell the world that in 1840, Islam is going to be restrained. And sure enough, on August 11th, 1840, Islam is restrained, and the whole world then recognizes that the year-day principle of Bible prophecy works. Therefore, the prediction about the end of the world, it's just been empowered. And the mighty angel of Revelation 10 descends. This message, this increase of knowledge needs to be empowered. But we're seeing a mirror here, aren't we? So, what we're saying is that in 9/11/2001, Islam comes back into history, just like Islam became part of the Millerite history. But in this history, 1840, Islam's going down. What's going to be happening with Islam in this history? It's going to be rising. Now, Islam, according to the pioneers, and this is a stumbling block in Adventism. Okay, I told you early on, and I mean it more than what you understand, that for 160 some years, perhaps for 6,000 years, but at least since the beginning of Adventism, Satan has been putting understandings and concepts into the mind of Seventh-day Adventists to prevent them from understanding the final warning message. When you see the final warning message, then you have a little bit of the discernment to see these misunderstandings that Adventism has latched onto that prevents them from really grasping the message. One of them, I spoke a little bit with this brother here today, but many of you may have this understanding too. The Protestant world has a teaching concerning Islam. That understanding has come into Adventism by several voices. The main voice currently that promotes this view is Walter Fite. And I'm not trying to badmouth Walter Fite. Of the people that are out there saying anything about Islam, he's one of them. But what he teaches about Islam, it's the Protestant view of Islam. Okay, and the Protestant view of Islam is that Muhammad married a Catholic woman and she converted him to Catholicism, and from that point on, Islam has been a tool of the papacy. That is a rejection of the pioneer understanding of the trumpets. The pioneer understanding of the trumpets is that the trumpets represent the historical forces that bring judgment to Rome. You can't be bringing judgment to Rome if you are a tool of Rome. The first four trumpets bring down Western Rome by 476. The fifth and sixth trumpet bring down Eastern Rome in 1453. And they deliver the deadly wound in 1798. Therefore, the seventh trumpet, which we're saying is Islam, is a force that's going to bring judgment upon the papacy. It's not a force that is a tool in the hand of Catholicism. All right. So, the majority of Adventism that are looking at Islam and Bible prophecy, they've co-opted this Protestant understanding, and I'm just being clear with you here. That does not agree with the chart. or with the pioneers. Okay? So when you understand that, you see that when the papacy is going down here, it's received its deadly wound. The reasoning from cause to effect, okay, Islam's going down. Papacy's down. Islam doesn't have to be active now because the papacy's been restrained. Here, 1989, the papacy's beginning to ascend. What do you expect to see? Islam begin to ascend, because that is the purpose of Islam. Okay? So, in June, according to Testimonies, Volume 1, page 21. Testimonies, Volume 1, page 21. Sister White says, in June of 1842, the Protestant churches closed their door against the first angel's message. Okay, when they close their door, you have a closing door here. That's closed. When they close their door, that marks the arrival of the second angel's message. Okay, and the second angel's, you'll notice that all these messages, you guys are looking tired right now. Am I losing you? Okay? All these messages arrive, and they're thereafter empowered. The first angel's message arrives in 1798. It's empowered in 1840. The second angel's message arrives in June of 1842, and Sister White plainly says that it's empowered at the midnight cry. This is the midnight cry in the summer of 1844. The midnight cry ends October 22nd, 1844, when the third angel's message arrives. Okay? And here we have a closed door. There are two closed doors in this history. You can show that these represent the two temple cleansings. Because this is the fulfillment of Joel. Our history is the fulfillment of Joel. But Christ's history was the fulfillment of Joel, right? And how many times did Christ cleanse the temple in his history? And how did Sister White say he cleansed the temple in Desire of Ages? Divinity flashed through humanity. Okay? When the mighty angel of Revelation 10 came down in 1840, divinity flashed through humanity, and by June of 1842, the Protestants closed their doors against that divinity. First temple cleansing. Then at the midnight cry for the second time, August 12th through 17th, 1844, August 12th through 17th, 1844, Exeter camp meeting, the midnight cry arrives, and divinity flashes through humanity again. And by October 22nd, 1844, the second door closes, the second temple cleansing has happened. Now, if you read the writings of the Millerites, William Miller tells us, if we're willing to see it, what caused the Protestants to close the door. You know what it was? It's when the 1843 chart was published. If. Okay? When was the 1843 chart published? In May of 1842. They call it the 1843 chart because it's predicting the end of the world in 1843, but it was published in May of 1842. And William Miller says at this time, the other Millerite preachers, they came to him and they said, William Miller, quit saying, if my calculations are right, the Lord will come in 1843. Take the if out of your presentations, because now we're using this chart, and this chart says 1843, and we want to be united. So now let's be dogmatic. The Lord is returning in 1843, and William Miller says as soon as he did that, the Protestant churches began to say, this is a delusion, this is fanaticism. So when the chart arrives in May of 1842, when did the Protestant churches close their doors? 1 month later, in June of 1842. Okay? So this history here, it's repeated in our history. When Islam is restrained on September 11th, 2001, the angel of Revelation 18 descends. It empowers this message. Okay? Time is no longer. This message here at the end of the world, the last 6 verses of Daniel 11, it's not based upon time prophecy. You know what?